Montana. We're going to have a Bible study. I'm looking up the verses right now. So it's a little strange, I know, but we're going to be doing a Bible study here on Luke 1 and Genesis chapter 1, okay, respectively. So anyways, the idea here is that we're going to, my idea, and, of course, you guys will have something different that you guys will probably bring and share with everybody else, but because it is Bible study, I want it to be interactive. I want you guys' comments. I want you guys to be able to put, your thoughts and share what you guys gleaned from it. But I saw some really big similarities between Genesis and Luke. And, Genesis is a really interesting chapter. And I used to just look at it as face value. Obviously, God created the world in 7 literal days, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about here in Genesis 1. But there's more to it. If you go underneath imagine the Bible as an ocean. That's what the Ivor Myers used to tell us. Imagine it's an ocean. If you're on top of the ocean, it's vast, right? It's huge. But then you get down inside and you get down underneath there, and then it's a whole different world. And that's what we're going to be dealing with tonight, I think. So, hey, Tim, good evening. Nice to have you here. And, of course, in case you didn't hear, we're going to be doing a Bible study, Genesis 1 and Luke chapter 1. And we're just going to jump right into it. Now, it says here, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That's a great title. Good evening, Liza. How you doing? I think it's just the two of you right at the moment, but hopefully everybody else will be joining in soon. I know we've had quite a few people subscribe this week, so maybe some new people as well, and they've responded to the invitation to Bible study, so we'll see how that goes. So, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, let's have a word of prayer first. Heavenly Father, we just ask that your Spirit will be with us tonight and that you will guide and lead this Bible study. In your name we pray, amen. All right, so I so need this tonight, Tim says. Heaven soon is with us. I do too, Tim. So, Bible study is so good for the soul, especially after a hard week, huh? I mean, you can get really beat up throughout the week, and then, a night of fellowship can kind of erase a lot of that. So, all right, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. All right, so right there is an introduction to the whole rest of the Bible, right? And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Now, I'm going to take a little liberty here. If you look in Revelation, it says the waters were peoples, multitudes, and nations, right? And the Spirit of God, that one verse, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, that right there spoke to me, with this little bit different, just a different way to look. I'm kind of at a loss for words. Rough day in the office. And God said, let there be light, and there was light, all right? And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So right there also, it tells me that division between light and darkness was also a division between good and evil, right? And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. This is also, to me, this is also how God transforms the human heart. He uses the same what's the word? He uses the same. I'll think of it in a second. The first thing he created was light, but Jesus says in John 8:12 that he is the light of the world. So when God says, "Let there be light," is he giving Jesus permission to start creating? That's interesting. By the way, Reformation is with us, and so is Spunky. Hey, y'all, happy Sabbath. But yeah, I haven't wished you guys a happy Sabbath yet. All right, so, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. So this is a dividing of the waters. Now, of course, we just said the waters were the peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. According to Revelation, now that's a prophetic, interpretation of waters, obviously. But I think we can use it here too. We're dividing the people, right? There's two groups of people. There's light and there's dark, right? You guys following me so far? And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, okay, and the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together.
Hello, Moto.
I don't know if you guys have been getting these spam calls, but they are just almost more than I can handle. I'm going to put do not disturb on. I can't take another one of those. World Sai has joined us. Happy Sabbath all. So, and God says, and God called, we're in verse 10, God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called the seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so. And again, so if we take this from the beginning, we begin as void and without form, right? And then we, yes, Liza, dear Father, calm our thoughts and the Holy Spirit take control of our minds. Yeah, it's been one of those days, I'll tell you right now. And always seems like it attacks, you get these attacks on days that these Bible studies happen. But yeah, thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. Happy Sabbath. I have lots of questions on this topic. Okay, good. Let's hear them. We're just barely started in Genesis, so. But, we start out the same exact way, form, void and without form, and then God's light shines upon us, and it begins to separate the good from the bad, right? The darkness from the light. We're talking about Genesis here, Genesis chapter 1, verse, beginning in verse 1 and onward, the creation of the world, but it's also the creation of God's Spirit within us, because the Spirit moves upon us, it says, it moves upon the waters. Can anybody find me that verse where it talks about the waters being multitudes and peoples there in Revelation? And so as he begins to move on us, he begins to manifest his Spirit within us. And then it says here that and God said, let the earth bring forth grass and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit. Now, what does that remind you guys of? The bringing forth of fruit is a byproduct of God's Spirit, is it not? And the earth brought forth grass, verse 12, and the herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. Okay? And God, and incidentally, there's a 7-day creation. There's also, what are we in, the 7,000 or 6,000th year of Earth's history? Now, what day did God make man? But the 6th day, right? And then the 7th, he rested. Well, our work here is going to reach completion upon the 6th day, if you follow the millennial week. And then upon the 7th, of course, the Sabbath rest. There was no form to the planet. There was literally nothing here. Isaiah 40:22 says, the circle and foundation were established at creation. Okay. Revelation 17:15, and he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So there's the reference right there. Thank you, Reformation. That's Revelation 17:15. All right, so that's where I'm going from off of that. And the rest of it we can kind of extrapolate, because we've heard the parables about the fig tree, bringing forth fruit. Remember when Jesus touched the fig tree and it withered and it died? This is all, those who don't produce fruit will ultimately suffer the same. I wonder if the light was literally God the Father. I mean, that's a good question, right? Nobody really witnessed, nobody alive on the earth anyways. I mean, the angels in heaven and even Satan witnessed the creation of the earth, but nobody here really did. Now, this account of Genesis was obviously through inspiration of the Holy Spirit as he spoke through Moses when Moses wrote Genesis. But that's a good question. I actually think, just me, okay, that Genesis was written in, it seems to have been written in a chiastic structure too. So it'll tell some of the story and then it'll retell it. And a good example is that is how it says, and God said, let there be light. And I think that's when the sun was brought into existence at that point. Many people have said that that was God's light himself lighting the world. And I'm okay with that. I'm 100% okay with that. And but I think that the sun was created on that day, and then it goes back and it reiterates there on the fourth or fifth day where it talks about the stars and the moon and the dividing of times and all those other things. It just kind of reiterates all of that in verse 4, because then the moon and the stars and the heavens were all, brought about at that point. Digging Dipper with Rick is with us. Here, let's get to Trisha's, and then we'll move on down the line here. Okay, when was this? How many years ago? Scientists say that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. I am seriously trying to figure this out. Okay, so have you heard of a man named Kent Hovind? All right, he's not a Seventh-day Adventist, but he's a creationist that explains a lot of this stuff. It's easy to say it, but it's hard. I know, because I grew up in public schools, well, kind of a mixture between public schools and Christian schools, and this was always confusing to me when I was young. Like, how can the world be billions of years old, but the Bible says it's only thousands of years old? The chronology in the Bible literally puts us at about the 6,000 year mark, okay? That flies in the face of what a lot of evolutionists are teaching us out there. Now, if you look at the old books in evolution and go back 100 years ago, evolution was only 10, 15,000 years old. That's what they claimed. And it went from 10 to 15,000 and now we're all the way up to billions and billions, because the odds is what they're trying to work with here. In other words, I'm finding a way, I'm finding a kind way to say that evolution is absolute BS, and it's been disproved many times over. There's a lot of Christian scientists, there's a lot of scientists, I should say, not even Christian scientists, but there's a lot more and more scientists are starting to support the idea of a creation Earth and a young age of the Earth, because fossils can be made. Kent Hovind, in a lot of his documentaries, points this out, that a lot of fossils can be made very quickly. We just think because it's made out of stone that it must have taken millions of years. Fossils can be made very fast, and they've done it in laboratories. So it's, that's the scientific way that you do things. Also, a lot of the like extinction, the mass extinction, they're teaching us that evolution teaches us that everything was small and it's getting bigger, but the fossilized records show everything was big and we're getting smaller. It's the opposite. You got to go by the evidence, and on and on. Anyways, I wonder if the let there be light moment was literally the Father giving the go-ahead for the planet formation, then Jesus, the light, created the actual planet whose water, which the Spirit moved. And of course, I mean, that could be, Verse 6, flat earth? Question mark. Nope. The firmament is known as the atmosphere, as the round earth's gravity pulled it into the spherical configuration. I think there's a verse in the Bible that talks about the sphere of the earth. That might be in Job. Heaven soon. Darkness was on the face of the deep, so that the waters happened before the light. But if Jesus is the living waters and a face is round, water and shape came before light. That's the entire Bible, Carrie. The Bible often gives a brief overview and then goes back to provide more details, talking about the chiastic structure, and it does. And that's how you can best understand the Bible, because a lot of people get bogged down. But that was a very common way the ancients wrote up until very recent. Even in the Greek, John borrowed that same structure to write Revelation and different things. The Bible gives us a timeline. It's around 6,000 years, okay? Yeah, chronology is, you guys did it for us once upon a time. I mean, you guys made it really simple. The chronology is very easy. I mean, once you study it academically, it's really not that hard to extrapolate the 6,000 year time period. The science lies. Rock formed at Mount St. Helens tests 20,000 years old. That's correct. Brand new concrete they've tested, I think, higher than that. Brand new concrete that they just poured. They take a chunk, they send it to a laboratory, and they get the results back, and it's 40, 50, 60,000, and they get different results from different. Carbon dating assumes a continuancy in all of the elemental concentrations. I think I said that right. Genesis 5, 3:32, 11, 10:32, along with Acts 7:4 and Genesis 12:4, gives a concise list of patriarchs and their ages. When you add these years from creation to Abraham to age 75, it totals 2,083 years. Galatians 3:16-17 states that it was 430 years from the covenant God made with Abraham in Genesis 12:1-3 to the giving of the Ten Commandments, also verified in Exodus 12:40-41. 1 Kings 6:1 says that it was 480 years from Exodus to the building of the Solomon's temple. 2,083 plus 430 plus 480 equals 2,993 years from the creation to the start of the building of Solomon's temple. Wow, this is good stuff. Did I highlight that? Sorry. According to verses in Ezekiel and 2 Kings, the temple stood 396 years. Ezekiel 1:1-2, 2 Kings 24:12, Ezekiel 4:6, 2 Kings 25:8. The temple was destroyed in the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar. 2 Kings, reference to that is 2 Kings 25:8, Jeremiah 52:12, in 588 BC. We have an exact date there. Walter Veith and Doug Batchelor recently did a series on your question, and you can find it online. Keep in mind that there's also a level of faith that is required as well. Thank you for that, Liza, because God never nails it down beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's how God does things. There's always that little bit that's left up to us to just believe what God said. God does that on purpose so that we take him for his word. It's a wise way for him to do things, actually, because then that allows us to lean on him and trust on him more. It has been 2006, and we continue on with the timeline here. It has been 2,612 years since 588 BC. The scripture gives a timeline of the approximate 3,388. I mean, these numbers are probably bogging you down, but academically, you can put all these together. I've seen it done before on timelines. 3,388, 3,391 years prior to that for creation. This puts the age of the earth at around 6,000 to about 6,003 years old, okay, approximately. And I've heard there's a little bit of time right at creation where, prior to the sin, that we don't know exactly how long that was. It could have been a few months. It could have been, some people say, well, Eve hadn't conceived yet, so it's probably less than a year, right? Spunky says, interesting idea, Reformation, that the Godhead was actually light, food to ponder. Well, God is light. It tells us literally that in the Bible, doesn't it? That God is light. Liza, I watch Doug Batchelor a lot. I will check that one out. Thank you. Yeah, they do a pretty good explanation on that. On day 2, God does not proclaim it was good. It was a Monday laugh out loud. On day 4, he proclaims it's good twice. Day 2 proclaims it was good. Okay. Okay. Day 3. Okay. Heaven Soon says the entire earth, the entire Godhead involved in creating, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and the man was created in his own image, in the image of God, verses 26 and 27. So that image, and again, this is going back to my little rendition of it. The creation of the earth is much like the creation of man, the recreation of man, if you will, where God has brought his spirit, put it in us, set us upright, made a difference between good and evil, so that we can differentiate the two. Oh, and there was a verse in here, too, I wanted to talk about, too, because this one really jumped out and smacked me. Let's start in verse 15. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Okay, now think about that statement right there. The greater light was to rule the day. All right? Think about this. Now use your spiritual mind. And the lesser light to rule the night. Now what are the prophets called? The prophets are literally called the lesser light. All right? And the nighttime is that which many of us experience, don't we? Now, the atomic or what is it? The doomsday clock is right set at 12 o'clock now, midnight. The greatest amount of darkness that somebody, I mean, typically when you say midnight, that's like the middle of the night, right? It doesn't get any darker than midnight. And so that's like straight up the darkest time. And it's the lesser lights that rule during these times of darkness. And we've seen a lot of darkness on this earth. And we've seen some times where there was light too. I think it tells us there, and was it 1 John? About how Jesus was the light of the world. And he came into the world and there was darkness or something along those lines. There's something called the spark of life, and it produces a flash of light. Oh, yes, during conception. I think that's where you're going with this. I'm more inclined to think that that's what Jesus became to us, our Father, our Creator, because he is the light of the world. Now, scientists can't seem to explain this, and they've even showed it on a YouTube video. If I find it, I'll put it on my Facebook page. But it's the exact moment that the sperm enters the egg and they become a living organism. There's actually like this little flash of light. And they can't quite explain it, but it's there. And that's God's little spark of life being put in that little egg. It's really a cool thing to ponder, because that puts God as the life giver, right? And this idea of light, now we still don't know what light is. We know it's a particle. We also know it's would they say a beam? Or no, it's well, there's two things that light is, because light can be refracted, which a beam shouldn't be able to. Anyways, yeah, I forgot how it goes, but all right, let's go to comment here. Time didn't start with sin. It started with day one. God set the parameters to calculate God set the parameters to calculate it on day 4. Genesis 1:14. It doesn't matter how long it was before man sinned. We don't add from sin, but creation. Okay. Oh, going back to what I said. Yeah, time didn't start with sin. It started with day 1. Okay, got it. God set the parameters to calculate it on day 1. That's Genesis 1:14. It doesn't matter how. Okay, I got you. Yeah. So they say that the world is that old because they believe in the evolutionary layers that were actually the layers created by the flood. You either believe evolution or you believe that there was Noah's flood. Yeah, I mean, catastrophism is what more scientists are throwing their hat in, because it just makes more sense. It's a more provable science than evolution. Evolution is a theory. Nothing's been proven. And the scientists who say that it has been is trying to pull your leg. I mean, it's a pretty big stretch. When you do the math, and I've watched people do the math, Hal Holbrook did the math on very simple math with the blocks. I don't know if you guys watched him do that on the documentary, The Seventh Day. The chances are like 1 to the power of like 43 or 100 to the power of 43 or something like that, which doesn't sound like a big number when you just say it, but it's literally, if you were to count every subatomic particle down to the size of an atom, there's not that many particles in all of the universe. So that's a huge, huge number. And you don't just get past that number once. In other words, it's not just a one-time event that brings us to the beginning of evolution. But like Walter Wyeth would explain it, and he used to be an evolutionist, so he knows all the ins and outs, and he became a creationist. That's what I love about Walter Wyeth. But he says it's literally like blowing up a house. How did that go? Blowing up a pile of wood and having it fall into a perfect log cabin. You're not just doing it once, but you're doing it over and over and over again, billions and billions and billions of times, because every cell is a miracle. Every building block, everything that's happening is truly a miracle. So it's like, it's not just 100 to the power of 43 once, but it's 100 to the power of 43, like billions and billions and billions of times over. I mean, these numbers are just so big that the scientists that support evolution have just added more time to everything to make it more plausible, but it's not any more plausible. If you understand just how big these numbers are, on a billion, a trillion, a gazillion years wouldn't be enough, because there's at some point where it becomes an impossibility. And that's really at where they're at with the odds of evolution actually taking place. You cannot believe both. No, you cannot. Yes. And in my naive mind, it never occurred to me. Adam was 130 years from creation when Seth was born, which is the amount of time we use to calculate the approximate age. Oh, good point. Okay, so the exact years of Adam is what we're actually going on. So we do have a date. The begats in Adam, whose father was God. Verse 30, if animals were to eat the green herbs of the field, should the snake have been eating fruit off of the tree? Well, that's a good question. No, I think they probably ate herbs as well, because the fruit was made for man. But, of course, we don't know for sure. Starting time with sin is the mistake that Viath often makes in his calculations. In saying that time didn't start until sin means God preordained the world to sin at creation, commanding to keep time. Okay. Another good point. Yeah, Walter Viath, a lot of people criticize him because he makes mistakes. And to me, that's okay. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. He's just a human, right? He brings a lot of good to the table, but people have shown me where where they disagree with him, and that's fine. What was man's original job according to verse 28? To multiply, replenish the earth, and to subdue it, have dominion over its creatures. And, I got a little something to say about that. I've said it before. God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that have life and fowls that move. All right, so I'm assuming everybody's read this. And God said, verse 26, let us make man in our image, plural, our image. Interesting, right? After our likeness, says it twice, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air, over the cattle and over all the earth and over every creeping thing and creepeth upon the earth. So God made man in his image. God is like the supreme ruler of the whole earth and heavens and everything, right? But he's given us dominion over the earth. And what really grinds my gears is when people will say, well, the bear attacks the man, and they'll say, well, he was in the bear's environment. Not according to the Bible. The whole earth is our dominion. In fact, it says that if a beast tears a man, the life of that beast is required. This really bothers me because people have put in the importance of animals above that of human, and that's not how it should be. It's exactly the opposite. Of course, that's how the devil wants everything. I agree, Reformation. The first day was when God said, let there be light, and God told us, the end from the beginning, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh is the day of the Sabbath. Happy Sabbath, everyone, Kevin says. Happy Sabbath, Kevin. Good evening. Glad you joined us, man. To all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. There you go. That's it. All right. So that's the question about the snake, probably, right? Genesis 1:30. All right, good. Thank you, Trish. Evolution takes away the Sabbath, and it takes away God's week, for a day is the Lord's as 1,000 years. All right? So we all make the mistakes. That's what makes us human. But it's our willingness to review and positions and teachings for correctness that we should consider. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, if we're not correctable, how can we grow? If we're so in love with our own ideas and stuff that we can't be corrected, then that's not the humility and the spirit of Christ, is it? Okay, so the green plants were food for every creature, human and animal. No. Question mark. Obviously, yes. including mankind. Well, but I think man was given the trees because it was after the fall that he was given the green herbs. So I think literally man's original diet was the trees. You know, it's a more noble thing. You know, you eat from the tree. But then when man took on sin, then he was given the herbs of the field, because obviously the tree of life was taken away. And when the tree of life was taken away, that limited man's, you know, well, of course, man began to die at that point. I mean, realistically, let's just see it for what it is. That was man's source of life, was the tree of life. And once that was taken away, we began to immediately lose our vitality. And the green herbs were given to man as a supplementary of the original diet, I think. What do you guys think? And now we have the herb of the field. Now, of course, after the flood, people were given animals to eat because there wasn't green herb on the field, out in the fields. Everything was destroyed. So enough animals were brought onto the ark that they would consume the animals. But a couple of things happened. If you notice during that time, life expectancy dropped sharply. Okay? Man's life expectancy went from like 900 years down to 120 years. And not only that, but the original diet was still that of plants. Okay? Just plants. What will we be eating in heaven? Just plants. We're not going to be chasing down chickens for chicken McNuggets. So anyways, Peter told us if we forget everything else, he wrote, to not forget this one thing, a day as to the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as a day. Why is that the most important thing? It points to the 1,000-year, or, you know, the millennial, right? The millennial week, probably, possibly. I mean, that's what the reformers, I think, extrapolated from that as well. Manuel Foss, hey, happy Sabbath and good evening to you, my fine sir. It points out the 1,000 years in heaven, and that's our prize. Okay, yeah. Ultimately, I was thinking here on earth, you know, the 6,000 years we've been here is, you know, as 6 days to the Lord, right? But there is that 1,000-year Sabbath. That is where we aim to be with Jesus for that 1,000 years. He was looking for his Savior's return. Okay, ad break. Remember to give thumbs up. Thank you, Spunky. Yeah, please do. That's very much needed. So hit that thumbs up. And if you guys are watching for the first time, man, you guys got to hit that subscribe button. Unless you're already subscribed. Don't hit it because that'll unsubscribe you. If it was the herbs and green things, then I agree with Heaven Soon. The snake should not have been eating the fruit. Yeah, I think the fruit was given to man to kind of differentiate between man and beast. And then after the fall, you know, of course, now the beasts eat the trees and we eat the herbs and vice versa. There is no distinction now in our diet. Why were both trees found in the middle of the garden? You mean the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life? I don't know. Well, it was a test, obviously, right? I think you probably got an answer for that. Why not in the outside of the garden? I mean, that is a good question, right? The poor apple gets the blame. Maybe it was a peach. So, you know, you guys look at an Apple notebook, right? Or an Apple phone. What symbol does it have? The apple with a bite taken out of it. Obviously, it probably wasn't an apple. Maybe it's a fruit we don't even have with us anymore. Because the tree of life was something different and special. But after sin, death of animals occurred. There was no death. This will be the same on earth, made new, no death. Yes, and of course, the first death was actually at the hands of God himself when he brought forth the skins and gave it to Adam and Eve to clothe themselves with. This was a symbol of his death. This was a symbol of the covering of their nakedness, which was shame to them after the fall. And I mean, you guys ever have that dream where you're running around in your underwear and everybody's, you know, like, I mean, it's kind of a terrifying dream, isn't it? I mean, you're just laid bare to the whole world. And that's what nakedness represents. It represents sin. It represents, you know, all of our blemishes, if you will. You know, the coverings is what God gave us. And God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Yes. So that's the original diet, unequivocally, right? It's a diet that still works to this day. I've been a vegetarian for many, many years. Topic of another subject, or another subject for another time, something like that. The Jewish tradition is that the 120 years given to Noah was a dual prophecy, and it's 120 jubilees. A jubilee is 50 years times 120 equals 6,000 years on the earth. Okay. Well, I mean, I don't subscribe to a lot of Jewish tradition, but I mean, that one's not too bad, is it? I mean, if it fits, right? If it fits, you can use it. Is it because God is to be the center of our life? Everything should be in our life should revolve around God? Well, I think so. I mean, it should now, but it doesn't, obviously. So many distractions. We get pulled away at every turn. Tree gives 12 different kinds of fruit. The tree in heaven. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I wonder if the original did too. That's a good point. Okay, or was that something that God added later? But it doesn't give detail in the beginning, does it? But it does in the end. He took the tree with him to heaven. The tree is going to be reintroduced to mankind at Liberation Day. Do we call it Liberation Day? D-Day, right? When Jesus comes. And, yeah, interesting. In the middle of its street, and on either side of the river, paraphrasing there from Revelation, was the tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month. The leaves of the trees were for the healing of the nations. Okay, not so much a paraphrase, actually. That's pretty close. The 120 jubilees, or 6,000 of sin, 6 just short of perfection, Satan's time to prove his point. $120 jubilees. Okay, so let me do the math here real quick. Sorry, I got to kind of picture it. So 6,000 divided by 120. That'd be 50, right? A jubilee is 50. Did I get that right? But then how does... Okay. In the midst of the garden stood the tree of life, surpassing in glory all other trees. Its fruit appeared like apples of gold and silver, and had the power to perpetuate life. Patriarchs and Prophets 46.4. There's some inspiration on the subject there. I didn't know it talked about the actual appearance of it. Since it does say that the tree of life gives different fruit, it's not fair to blame the apple. Could have been a mango. The tree of life most likely is a very unique type of fruit in and of itself. I mean, got 12 manner of fruit on it. I mean, I know you can take like a citrus tree and graft different, types of citrus on a citrus tree. You can take an apple tree and graft even you can even put a pear on an apple tree, or, you know what I'm saying? You can grow different fruits on the same tree. We do that to this day, but different manner of fruit, it says. So it's like a pear and an orange, totally different types of species, I mean, there's kinds, right? We're told that also in Genesis, that each animal was fashioned according to its kind. People say, well, you couldn't fit all the animals on Noah's Ark, but you can if you take them by kinds. In other words, the cat came from one kind, all the cats that we have. The cattle, the deer, what are all in the deer species? We got moose, we got elk, we got different, we got the little tiny little, what do they call them, Sitka deers in South America, all the way up to, well, the moose, I think in North America is probably the largest, or there's kudus, there's all these variations of the deer. But they only brought one variation on the ark. And then from there, the genetic diversity took over from there. And that's something else that, creation scientists will also demonstrate is the genetic diversity that God gave man. You could see it in mankind, all the different colors, all the different shapes, all the different sizes. There's a genetic diversity in mankind as well. It's observable. I mean, that's science. And so God put that there originally in the beginning, okay? Well, we're at the 40-minute mark. We should go to Luke now. We were supposed to do them both. So what are some of the similarities, guys, between Genesis and Luke? All right, so let's go to Luke chapter 1. I think Luke is a really cool book because it tells us the life and the beginnings of John the Baptist, right? And the other Gospels don't really give us that beginning perspective. Now, Luke, as far as I know, was actually a physician, okay? And Luke was interesting because I heard the story about him once upon a time, but he didn't walk with the disciples, did he? Or did he? I'm not sure if he did. So this is something from an outsider's viewpoint of Jesus. In legend, the Adam's apple on the neck is said to be the visual representation of the apple Adam ate that got trapped in his throat. I'm certain that was probably a Catholic thing. Or at the very least, if not a Catholic thing, probably came out of the Dark Ages at some point. You know, the superstitious era. Just had this conversation with my wife regarding animal kinds. 12 tribes, perfect cube. The holy city, 4 squared, perfect cube. Perfection, circles leave you stuck in a repeating cycle. God will not tolerate sin. Well, a righteous God cannot coexist with sin. I should say sin cannot coexist with God. The brightness of God will destroy it. That's why he has to veil himself from the earth. Because if he showed himself, I mean, we often ask that question. Yes, Luke was a physician. That's what I thought. Because at the point of sin, now, of course, he still spoke face-to-face with Adam and Eve, but remember, they were afraid, and they were fresh off the press, you know what I'm saying, right out of the oven. And right after sin, the fear entered Adam and Eve, and they hid their face from God. It wasn't very many generations after Adam and Eve that God just couldn't show himself at all because it would have caused their death. Remember at Sinai, they said, don't even have God to speak to us anymore because lest we die. I mean, they felt like just the voice of God was enough to cause death. I mean, a traumatic experience. One thing I know it would have caused for sure was for them to walk a straight line had they allowed God to continue to talk. It's like a lot of people will try to silence us in these last days, trying to keep us from repeating the words that God has given us in this Bible because it will expose them, right? And that's what they hate. And of course, that's what God's people love. It's almost like we're sadists, right? Because we love the pain of our sins being exposed. Well, but I think what it is, we love God enough that we're willing to go through the pain of the exposition of our sins so that we can be cleansed. It's that important to us. You know, the pain becomes secondary to our desire to worship God. Luke travailed with Paul and possibly John Mark. This same John Mark wrote the book of Mark and is said to be the youth who fled naked from Christ's arrests. Oops, I didn't highlight that. Okay, oh, that's interesting. Well, verse 3 says that he has a perfect understanding of all things from the first to unite onto the, I read that right? From the first to unite onto the in order. So Luke technically didn't travel with the 12, but he did travel with those who had personally listened to and knew Jesus. Okay, that's what I thought. In other words, Luke was with them from the beginning. He just wasn't one of the apostles according to the verses 3 and 4 of this chapter. Agreed. I do see a link to the description of Noah's righteousness and that of John the Baptist's parents Carrie, maybe we need to discuss the book of Luke during Sabbath school time tomorrow. It is a very long chapter. We're taking like 80 verses with lots of information. Yeah, okay. So I was kind of thinking that. I was going to power through because we kind of agreed on Genesis and Luke, but no, you're right. We can hold that off for tomorrow morning. We're going to come back on tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock Mountain Time. So, sorry. Well, let's go back to Genesis. We got too many things we skipped over there. So what's the deal with, okay, I wanted to go back. Now we covered light, we covered the night and the day. And okay, so we've gotten down to, let me go down to the 6th day again. I would like to discover the Sabbath school lesson tomorrow. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, right? I mean, we need to, if we're going to do if we're going to do this Bible study, maybe we should just leave Luke for next Friday and then do the Sabbath school lesson tomorrow, because I know there's probably quite a few people that would probably, that look forward to the Sabbath school lesson. So let's do that. Let's discuss Luke next Friday, Sabbath school lesson tomorrow. We'll just keep it simple. High probability, it's an Apple Eve 8. Satan was there, so he knows. Since Apple uses it as a logo, I pointed that out earlier, and the company has ties to the occult, Satan knows it was an apple and uses it to taunt God. I mean, I've thought of that very same thing too. And so I agree. Let's ditch the lesson and go with Luke. I know you guys aren't crazy about the lesson, but it is, no, we're not going to stop doing Sabbath school. I think there's quite a few people that still like the Sabbath school. Now, I do appreciate, like, if Sabbath school is an error, we need to point that out. But I don't know if we're to discard it just yet, because it is a, it is a corporate part of our belief, our core belief system, and it sort of unites us in that way. And so, while I'm pretty sore with the church right now, I'm pretty hurt about everything that transpired recently. I'm not ready to just give up on it, just like that. My sentiments were I had some pretty sad sentiments a few weeks ago about how everything transpired and the way it all went down. And, the meeting that they said they were going to have never took place. I mean, it was just between two individuals, I'm afraid, that decided to go against it. And anyways, we talked about that enough. But no, we're going to do Sabbath school tomorrow. Let's continue we've set a whole day aside for this study, which I think is important. We need to diversify. We have Wild Card Wednesday, straight up Bible study Friday, Sabbath school, Sabbath. And then maybe we'll have time to do one more, dedicated lesson for another day as well. So that's my opinion. So for what it's worth, your guys' opinion are just as important as mine. I just feel like Sabbath school is something that we've done for so long that we should just continue to do it, because a lot of people have joined Prophecy Montana just for that. So I wouldn't want to take that away from them. All right, so now let's go back to, okay, let's go back to verse 26. Let's reread this, and then let's talk about this a little bit more. I don't think we spent quite enough time to do that. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and the fowl." Okay, we already talked about that. Verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. That's always been kind of a strange tongue twister why he worded it exactly like that. Okay. And I won't even go with the whole, I won't even say it. And God blessed them. That would be almost blasphemy at this point to say anything like that. Maybe you guys know what I'm thinking. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it. Okay? So there was the command to be fruitful and multiply. That was a direct command from God. And have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of the earth, okay? And to every beast, we're skipping to 30, of the earth, and to every fowl of the earth, and everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given you every green herb for meat, and it was so. Now, wait a second. I just said something earlier, and maybe I didn't get it quite right. And God said, behold, I have given you every green herb bearing seed. Okay, so that's fruit, which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree, which is the fruit of the tree, yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. Okay, so I was right. That's what I thought. And that word meat just means food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the earth, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat, and it was so. So there is a distinction between the diet. And God saw that everything that he had made, behold, it was good. It was evening and morning. We're the sixth day. All right, so God created the earth in 6 days. He's recreated us in 6 days, or 6,000 years. And the seventh day is when God rested, obviously. And there's a pattern there that's undeniable. All right, so Heaven Soon says you have to be careful with the Sabbath school lesson because it is using an awful lot of mind control, but we can't take the verses that they're discussing and show where they're misleading. Well, we'll just, whenever we can point out the errors in there, well, let's definitely do that. Carrie, I've been praying. The enemy loves to divide and conquer. Keep the faith and don't lose hope. Thank you, Liza. No, honestly, thank you. To be able to resist no, I think Liza spoke to me personally, actually, Heaven Soon. I don't think she was referencing the lesson. To be able to resist the hypnosis that they are, okay, so it gets very tedious having to always point out every place. Yeah, but, maybe instead of that, maybe we just focus on, the lessons that we can glean from it. So last week went to A. Is there more you were going to say, Manuel? Not sure. But anyways, well, what else can we add to that? I mean, I know we wanted to do Luke on there, but there's just not enough time. There's no way. There's too many verses, so we'll have to probably continue that on Friday. And I think Luke does deserve, at the very minimum, a whole hour worth of our time, because it does. It goes through the whole life of the I don't understand how to study the quarterly. I have asked Hope Sabbath School, 3ABN, and local church members and never get a satisfactory answer. Oh, do you mean like, well, they divide it by the day, obviously. You know that. But what do you mean you don't know how to study it? Like, for example, because, I've always just kind of read, well, you're supposed to. And I guess we were kind of on and off through the years with this, but aren't you supposed to, it's like to be in addition to like a regular, like a devotional time? Or, maybe you do your devotions in the morning and do the Sabbath school study at night, or however your day pans out. But I think what it's supposed to be is just like a daily study, and then come together and just kind of rehearse it. That's why I've always had kind of like a little bit of a issue with the Sabbath school teachers that just kind of go over the whole thing instead of, because with us here, I've always the people who came on and taught would always teach it like every other Sabbath school teacher. But I've always thought, well, we've already done the Sabbath school. At least most people should have. Let's see if we can get some extracurricular, material on the subject, if you will. Carrie isn't saying that he's not going to do the stuff at school. We can try, Liza, but we must be careful and wise to how we are pushing spirit formation teaching in the lessons. Yeah, well, I know. it does exist, and maybe that's what God's called you to do, heaven soon, is be that monitor that points it out. But I mean, I don't feel impressed to just go through the lesson and just point out like spiritual formation and all of the things that are wrong with the lesson. I mean, my whole thing is just to take something that's very commonly used with all of the people of our faith anyways, and just go through it maybe in a little bit different fashion than most other people do, you know. Like, for example, you know, we can, because we often go on the squirrel trails, you know, and, you know, I love the squirrel trails. I don't know what you guys think, but, you know, the extra stuff that you don't often get with the lesson, you know, you can be reading, something that maybe the lesson is trying to point out, but then there's always those things that the lesson didn't point out that's, you know, interesting to talk about as well. That's kind of where I've always gone with the lesson. I've always kind of liked to just, take it where, you know, where I think it leads, and, you know, just sort of do that. Last Sabbath went to a church where I stopped attending regularly. They did a sermon on 5 types of prayer. The 5th was on contemplative prayer. That's a doctrine of devils. I'm avoiding that church. You know, I mean, that's sometimes what we have to do, man. We have to avoid, well, I say that, but here's another look on that, Manuel. The other perspective on that is, gee, that church needs guidance. That church needs, because there's people in there, right? And there's vulnerable people that are being taught incorrectly. And so I mean, I don't think we should go into a church and just like try and take over and point out everybody's sins, because that's just not well received. You know, that's not human. The human spirit doesn't enjoy that, right? I mean, you can't just go to your spouse and tell everything your spouse is doing wrong and expect them to just correct it, right? I mean, we know how human nature works. But you can go into a church like that and you can be a part of it. And you can be that little voice, you know, that wisdom in there. So that's maybe what God is calling us to do as well. Just a thought. Liza says, yes, it's in addition to devotion, reading the Bible text and gleaning. Last week's lesson was very insightful to me. I asked the Holy Spirit to guide me. Yeah, and I get something out of the lesson each time too. I mean, anytime we're looking at Bible verses, we're going to get things from it, you know. And here's a message to Spunky there. Spunky, they're all literally planting thoughts in your mind by giving you verses out of context. Okay, I'll let you guys have that conversation. Okay, digging deeper with Rick. Oftentimes, some of the best studies are off on squirrel or bunny trails. Oh, okay. Well, they are, I think, you know. And so we have, we've been given a guide. And I think for those who are reading the lesson, you know, if there is something like very blatant in it, it should be pointed out to people who are reading the lesson and ignorantly or unknowingly going through it. It shouldn't be the topic of the whole study. I think we should be more uplifting than that. But an occasional, you know, an occasional morsel about correction here and there is always good. But I think correction should be like taken with a grain of salt too, because too much correction can lead to, like, you know, people shutting off, and we don't want that. We want people to stay with us, and we want people to acknowledge truth. And I think if we put enough truth out there, people will begin to see the errors up by themselves, you know, without, you know, a whole lot of, just be careful. Well, and you know, that's why we have you guys here too. You know, listen, that's the group study with mature Christians is exactly that. It's a safe place. And we examine, we re-examine, we study to show ourselves approved, right? Rebuke, reproof, all those things that Paul mentioned, that the Bible is for. And so we have to utilize it like it's supposed to be utilized. You know, I mean, obviously the Bible can be very offensive to people. but we preach it anyways, right? Even though it offends people, it could offend them today, but but then, but then if that creates a correction in their life, then that's a good thing, because then they'll come back even stronger. If they're willing to follow the Lord, they'll take that correction and that reproof. But also there's encouragement in the Bible. There's a tremendous amount of encouragement. There's promises and things like that. And oftentimes, we as Christians, we need those little morsels of encouragement. I sure needed them today, I'll tell you. We sure need those morsels of encouragement, because rebuke can just sometimes cut us to the quick, to the point where there's not much spirit left in us. It's not about pointing out every little sin, but it is about the big ideas being promoted from this pulpit. I agree. That's what gets me, and me too. And no one else speaks up. They're just blindly accept it without even thinking, well, we are going to speak up. And you guys know I am all about that. I am all about that. And we can maybe, how about this? Maybe we'll dedicate an entire Wildcard Wednesday to spiritual formation and exactly what it is, and contemplative prayer as well. Because both those things are very dangerous, and they pervaded the church, and I've seen it personally with my own eyes. And it's good for people to learn those things, right? So we could talk about that. I'm not going to shy away from any subject. I'm not going to turn my head. Obviously, if there's something that is leading people astray, it has to be talked about and has to be dealt with. And so maybe that's where we'll start next week, and who knows where it'll end up. That isn't how mind control works. Mesmerism is so interwoven into this lesson. If you knew exactly how they... Yeah, but the problem is this. Is mesmerism and more... the more modern language for that is hypnotism. Hypnotism is not that, okay? Because when we're reading something, we're not falling under hypnotism by reading it, because our frontal lobe is very much awake. Hypnotism will put us into a beta state. And that's usually from flashing lights, repetitive scenes, scene change, what TV does, literally, and more recently, social media. That's the most dangerous form. Music, too, will also hypnotize. So, if we're going to be talking about the dangers of hypnotism, we have to really include music and TV on there as well, and even social media. Those are the most dangerous forms of it. When we're reading a book, it's literally going through the filter. It's when our filters shut off. I have a hard time answering the questions from the text given. Oh, you mean on the lesson? Well, and listen, that's why we do this together, guys, is because if there's, I feel like I'm just being apologetic here, but honestly, let's just continue to do the lesson, and let's just continue to do it how we've done it. Whenever there's a problem with the text or the verse, we're gonna reread it, we're gonna re-examine it, we're gonna go over it. We'll make whatever corrections are necessary. And believe me, there's a lot of people that listen to the Sabbath School, and they're gonna need, a correct understanding of things as well. Like I said, I don't think we should obsess over it, but if it pops up and it's obvious, I think we should talk about it, although briefly, and then to move on to more uplifting things. Thank you. That does seem to happen. I begin to think I'm stupid. No, no, not at all. So, but anyways, folks, we're past an hour, and I'm just kind of rambling here a little bit, and I don't know. Yeah, I start to feel stupid because, I know you guys have different directions that you guys want to take this in, and, if you guys were all in agreement, then we could take it in that direction. But obviously, we have to do this diplomatically as well. We have to also look at, our history of how we do things too here on Prophecy Montana, and so. But again, I'm just stammering along some more. Let's catch a couple more of these comments. That's the point of spiritual formation and mesmerism. It does, it's not done through the flashy things we've seen on TV. It's about putting your mind into a relaxed state that is susceptible to suggestion. Well, it's more than a relaxed state. I mean, it's changing the brain waves, and they've not shown that to be, you know, a problem with reading, where it is a problem with music and TV and certain things like that, and repetition, you know, like chanting and stuff like that. But anyways, enough of that. Let me get these other comments up, and so, all right, Thomas, peace be with you, brother. And Liza, God bless you. Heaven soon, Reformation, Spunky, Manuel, anybody else I've missed, Tim, Digging Deeper with Rick, all you guys. Love you guys a lot. And, you know, without you guys, this would be a pretty boring lesson study at that. So, but God bless each and every one of you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning.